Nervous energy is surrounding our training camp today. Panthers Nation! We have two big updates. First, one quarterback with a hamstring injury might actually play Week 1. Second, a young round 1 receiver is stuck in a walking boot until Thursday. I will reveal both names in a moment. Stay until the end, like, and subscribe to hit 2,000 subscribers. Backup quarterback Haynes King is expected to recover from his hamstring injury in time to play in Week 1, according to head coach Dave Canales. After watching him go down during the Hall of Fame game against Arizona, I feared the worst for his season. He has not practiced or taken any snap counts since that night and will miss the final preseason game this week. Let's be real, seeing a young player on the roster bubble suffer such a setback creates legitimate anxiety for any observer who follows the depth chart closely. I'm excited to see him back on the field, but I also want to pump the brakes a little until he is actually cleared for contact. He showed real promise during his limited summer reps, which is exactly why the front office seems willing to keep him around, despite missing so much crucial time in the trenches and throughout camp. Is this the real deal, or are we just hoping for depth that simply isn't there yet? His recovery timeline is promising, but the lack of preseason reps makes me wonder if he can truly handle the speed of a live game if our starter goes down. His ability to remain on the roster despite this injury suggests that the coaching staff sees real special teams, value, or high-level potential in his skill set that outweighs his current physical limitations. With the regular season right around the corner, his presence in the quarterback room is a vital piece of our overall strategy. I need to know if this medical clearance is purely precautionary or if he will still be dealing with lingering tightness that could impact his mobility. How can a guy effectively secure his position on the active roster when he has been sidelined since the initial Hall of Fame contest against Arizona? Joe Person highlights that the backup signal caller Haynes King is officially trending toward playing Week 1, and this is the part that gets me. Having watched his progression stall out due to that nagging hamstring issue during the height of training camp, my personal take is that the team is banking on his early flashes of talent rather than his recent body of work. Is this level of faith from the front office a sign of genuine long-term potential? Or are we just watching them operate out of desperation for reliable depth? Looking back at how the organization has handled similar injury timelines in previous seasons, it is obvious they prefer giving developmental assets every possible chance to prove their worth before making permanent cuts. Canales is clearly evaluating him based on what he showed during those early summer sessions, instead of punishing him for an unavoidable soft tissue setback that kept him from taking any meaningful snap counts lately. Without that final preseason game to test his mobility under pressure, the coaching staff is likely leaning on medical feedback to determine if his leg strength can hold up against a live defensive rush. If he is truly ready for the opener, he will need to display that signature athleticism immediately to prove he belongs in the room. Does the lack of live game reps mean he will be playing through significant discomfort? Or is the medical staff finally confident that the injury is fully behind him? My gut says they keep him because his upside is high enough to warrant the risk. But even a minor setback during the regular season could force them to reconsider his role on the depth chart. Now let us shift focus to another development that has everyone talking. Head coach Dave Canales recently confirmed that Xavier Legette is currently dealing with a lingering foot injury. This setback is significant because our 2024 first-round pick needs every available snap to find his rhythm after a 2025 season that saw his production dip from his rookie campaign. Last year, he recorded 35 receptions for 363 yards and 3 touchdowns, but his development has stalled just as the season approaches. Canales announced on Monday that the receiver is currently wearing a protective boot to manage the soreness. The plan is to keep him in that boot until Thursday before initiating a ramp-up phase over the weekend, specifically to have him ready for the practice session scheduled during our bye week before we face Chicago. The boot was first spotted this past Friday when Legette was sidelined for our preseason game against Jacksonville. I am genuinely worried about his status because we need his speed to stretch the field. But I also want to pump the brakes a little until we see him moving at full speed without discomfort. Does this injury fundamentally change his role in the offense for our September 13th opener against the Bears? The bottom line here is that his health is the priority, yet missing these final preseason reps could force the front office to adjust the rotation behind him. Is this just a minor precaution, or are we looking at a long-term issue that will hamper his efficiency throughout the year? Seeing a young talent like Leggett sidelined during such a critical transition phase is frustrating for anyone who follows our roster closely. Hopefully, this conservative approach with the boot allows him to return to form, but we need to see him back on the grass very soon. Banking on a recovery for a first-round wide receiver while he remains tethered to a medical boot is a gamble that defines our preseason stress. Having watched his production slide from a promising rookie start to a measly 3 scores last year, I am convinced that every single rep he misses is a blow to his potential breakout. Now here's the thing, Dave Canales has laid out a specific timeline to have him back by our bye-week practice session, but is that really enough time to build chemistry before we open against Chicago? The upside here is obvious because we desperately need a vertical threat to stretch the defense, and his explosive ability, if healthy, provides the exact spark our offense lacked throughout his sophomore dip. However, the downside is just as clear, as lingering foot issues often sap the very burst and lateral agility that make a receiver effective in the slot or along the boundary. Why would the coaching staff risk a setback by rushing him back when his long-term health is worth so much more than a few early games? Other observers around the league are rightfully pointing out that missed time for a young guy usually translates to a lack of polish in his route running and timing with our signal caller. I am genuinely caught between wanting him on the field to prove his value and fearing a permanent regression if he pushes through pain too early. The way I see it, this conservative ramp-up approach is the only sane path. Yet, I cannot help but worry about his confidence once he finally sheds that boot. Can we afford to wait on him while other pieces on our depth chart are competing for every available target? I am not yet hitting the panic button, but this situation definitely demands constant monitoring. When you put both of today's stories together, the picture that emerges for the Carolina Panthers is one of a franchise choosing patience over panic to protect our most valuable developmental assets. Watching a backup quarterback like Haynes King and a first-round wide receiver like Xavier Leggett navigate these health hurdles is tough. But both instances point to a front office prioritizing long-term stability over quick fixes. This combined trend suggests that the coaching staff remains committed to their original roster construction, betting that waiting for these players to return to full strength provides a higher ceiling for the upcoming season than rushing into roster bubble adjustments. Here is where it gets interesting, as this strategy tests whether our depth can truly weather the storm before the regular season kicks off against Chicago. I see this as a calculated risk, keeping guys who showed flashes of potential rather than cutting ties prematurely due to temporary setbacks. Is keeping King the right move if he stays limited in his mobility? And regarding our receiver, would you really feel comfortable if we held him out until the bye week to ensure his foot is finally 100%? I am definitely anxious to see if these decisions pay off, so I want to hear from the fans in the comments. Do you trust this conservative medical approach, or are you worried about missing early season production? If you enjoyed the video, do not forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. I am still pushing toward our first 2,000 subscribers, and every one of you helps me get there. Panthers Nation, I will see you in the next one. We have an incredible journey ahead as this team continues to rebuild.